Good morning, everyone. You hear me in the back all right? Great. Welcome to Microsoft Hybrid Cloud Journey. My name is Benedikt Berger and I'm joined today by my great colleague Natascha Merker, who is a good soul of the Microsoft Cloud and running things in the background, running smoothly, because this is a typical E2E best practice session. Because Alex says everyone, well, don't rely on live demos. So, well, we're doing live demos all session long. And Alex says, well, if you're doing demos, don't rely on the internet. So we're doing Azure demos all day. So everything is set up properly and what possibly could go wrong. In the next 40 minutes, I will give you a short overview what's a typical journey into Microsoft's hybrid cloud story. I think most of you heard the recent announcements around Microsoft's public cloud platform to come to the UK, to come to Germany, and put a big focus on security. And I think this will be a huge opportunity for most of us to start using hybrid cloud services. Unlike most Microsoft personnel, I'm not the guy who's saying Microsoft Azure is a solution for everything. Most of you know me already. I'm a typical infrastructure data center guy. I'm Microsoft MVP for Hyper-V, so I'm coming from the classic virtualization approach. But in the last 2 to 3 years, I did many projects where I took some solutions from Microsoft Azure and used it for a classic hybrid cloud approach, and the best practices of it I want to give you an overview today. Quick show of hands, folks. Who is using Microsoft Azure services in production as of today? Some of you are already. Who is using them for demo environments, lab environments, or any other scenarios? Okay, great. Maybe after the session, some of you get some ideas to get into the things as well. I've prepared, I think, 2 or 3 PowerPoint slides. I will go into the typical way you build up your hybrid cloud scenario, starting with network connectivity, going into hybrid identity, and then moving around virtual machines, because we all are virtualization guys, approaching classic scenarios around backup, disaster recovery, and we'll talk briefly about management and monitoring. So let's dive into these parts. I will go to the last slide I have here to give you a short overview about the classic networking approach. We all know our classic data center, our on-premise infrastructure, of course, with a typical Microsoft setup. And now we can go to Microsoft Azure and create resources there. I think most of us have already created virtual machines in Azure. And how do you connect to a virtual machine you created in Azure? You create a new VM in Azure, how do you access it? RDP, Remote Desktop Protocol, over the public internet. Let's look in our own data center who is publishing the internal servers with open RDP ports to the public internet. Hands up. Nobody. Why not? Because we all say, well, I'm not that crazy. I'm really crazy sitting Saturday morning here in a hotel room and I'm hearing some Azure stuff. But I'm not that crazy to publish my servers over the public internet with open RDP connections. Well, every virtual machine Azure creates does this by default, because we need to access our virtual machine by default. But this is not the way to do it. This is just a way to get things started. If we have a new virtual machine, we can access them by via RDP. But the really first thing you should do in a hybrid cloud environment is to close these public connections, because we don't want to do it, and also in my opinion it's a huge security risk. The way to access our Azure virtual machines or Azure resources is to do it over a classic private virtual network, a VPN. And Azure supports exactly one type of VPN connections, IPsec VPNs. Fortunately for us, it's standardized, so every client that is able to create an IPsec connection can use to connect to Azure. Of course, Microsoft has a list of supported clients and supported devices that can create this connection. There are typical hardware router like Cisco, like Juniper, like Checkpoint on it, but there are also software clients like, of course, Microsoft Windows on it. If we need another VPN connection type other than IPsec, Microsoft Azure is not the resource we can use because it's not supported in any kind of way. And what we are doing now is we are using this VPN tunnel that can be a site-to-site connection or point-to-site connection. I will go into that in a minute. And allow connections to our virtual machines only over the IPsec VPN tunnel and removing the public endpoint of the virtual machine. That's what we want to do next. For that we are switching into a real-world Azure subscription, leaving the PowerPoint presentation. And a second, and I will show you how to do it. What we have done in preparation is just to create a new virtual machine, which we use as a management virtual machine. So everything you're seeing on the screen here is happening in a virtual machine in Microsoft Azure. And we have created another virtual machine where our super high securely E2E management services are relying on that are not publicly available over the internet. And we have created site-to-site and point-to-site VPN connections. I really like the approach that Azure is doing there in terms of security, because the VPN connection we are creating is terminating in our own, by our self-created Azure network. It's not terminating in an Azure data center on a big central point in an Azure data center and then being routed or nutted to our personal connection. No, when we create a virtual machine in Azure, it's using two virtual machines in the background. When you're in Azure, select create a new VPN gateway. It's spinning up two virtual machines in your personal Azure network. This virtual machine will run routing and Rust services, and they will be load balanced, and this is your public endpoint. You will see the IP address, so you can connect your IPsec devices and your IPsec clients to this public endpoint. But if you use this VPN connection, you are every time in your personal secure network. That is IPsec encrypted. So there's no shared component in an Azure data center where you have an unencrypted part of your connection or something. We are now in our management VM, and there's a virtual machine I want to access. If I create a new remote desktop connection to this virtual machine, it's this one exactly. And when we try to connect, please open RDP client, exactly. And try to connect to this virtual machine. This is the internal IP address of the virtual machine. This attempt will be unsuccessful because I'm now trying this over the public internet, and I've removed the remote desktop endpoint of this virtual machine. It's really easy. You just go into the properties in the Azure Management Portal and say I want to remove the endpoint, select the VM, select the endpoint, and then you just select the virtual machine and select delete this endpoint. And what we've prepared on the management VM is just a point-to-site VPN connection. We say, okay, this is not successful. A point-to-site VPN connection just in this management virtual machine. You can also use a hardware device like a router, a firewall. Microsoft's cheapest device we use for lab environments is a Vintech router that is available on Amazon for around 90 euros, so you don't need the high-end enterprise hardware to do that. I've also seen some folks to do that with a Fritzbox. It's not my personal recommendation because you will have a CPU utilization on your router device on 80% continuously for securing the VPN connection, but it's possible with everything that speaks IPsec. And now we connect this point-to-site VPN. It's using a certificate-based authentication, and this is why I tell you this is great for single user group or small user groups like administrators. This is not something you would use for an end user because it's a single certificate for all users. So when some of your company's users are leaving the company, you would have to renew the certificate on all of the other clients. So the point-to-site VPN is just, I call it an administrative interface. And we are now creating the Azure Virtual Network Connection. It's an own client. Basically, it does two things. It creates the IPsec network connection into your Azure network, and it updates your routing table because this VPN client knows which network addresses, which ranges you use in terms of IP addresses. The only best practice when creating your Azure networks is therefore just one rule. Do not use the same IP address spaces or ranges you have on-premise. because this is just a pure routing thing, especially when you want to maybe do a partial failover of your services to Azure in a disaster scenario. You don't want to use the same IP address networks because your routing would go crazy until that. So if my certificate is not gone invalid in the last 10 minutes, this connection should be successful in a second, and then we will be able to access the RDP connection of this virtual machine. Now the magic is happening. Virtual network is connected. And now I'm using the internal IP address of the virtual machine. You're saying this is no public IP address. And now we are getting a remote desktop connection that is successful in about a second. This is the first thing you should do with all your Azure virtual machines when you are trying to use them in a business manner more than doing more than playing around with it. Because if you are not doing this, all your virtual machines are accessible by everyone from the public internet from a network perspective. Any questions on this? I'll move that way. And Natasha will do some magic in the background to do the work.
Yes.
And we should see a Windows Server connection into our Azure VPNs. If you look at other public cloud vendors or hosting vendors, you very often see the approach where you have a dedicated tenant on the hoster's firewall who is then netting or routing your connection into your network segment. Most of the times in an unencrypted way after the public endpoint. That's why I really like the Azure approach. And now we are facing some high CPU usage in Azure, installing some updates or something, okay? But we will show you the successful VPN connection. You already saw the logon prompts that wasn't coming for the virtual machine. So basically we saw that our connection was successful. But we'll just leave it open and switch back to it in a second. Let it install some updates in the process. I'm now switching back on my notebook and saying, okay, we have a successful physical network connection. There's one alternative to do beside the VPN connection. You can go to Microsoft and to Microsoft partner who is doing some business and bandwidth and saying, I want a dedicated internet connection from the Azure data center of my choice, maybe Amsterdam, to my own data center. I recently did a project in Hamburg where we did an Azure Site Recovery project for 150 VMs, and they said, hey, I want a gigabit connection from the Azure data center in Amsterdam to my own data center in Hamburg as a dedicated connection. So there was some work done to, well, take a cable, a very long cable from Hamburg to Amsterdam, but it was surprisingly cheap. It's not that expensive as you think, and of course, and you don't have to rely on VPN settings, public internet connections. You just have a one-hop connection from your data center to Azure, so it's very great for high bandwidth and low latency services. This is a side-to-side VPN connection. We just demoed the point-to-side VPN connection, because so if you have a router or firewall, this would be the preferable way to do, because you don't have the certificate authentication issue I talked earlier about. Okay, since there are no questions, let's jump to the next topic. It's public identity or hybrid identity. I'm logged in here into my Azure subscription with my Active Directory account I use for work. Who is using their own Azure subscription with an Active Directory account? Quick show of hands. One. Who is using a Microsoft account for accessing Azure? Most of you. Okay. Let's take a typical approach. You want to try out Azure? Go to Azure.com and say, hey, I want a free trial. And say, okay, I get 30 days for free. Use it and we see, okay, Azure is great. And now we want to insert some coins. We go to our boss and say, hey, if we buy some Azure credits, like 50,000 euros, we get a euro for free. Let's do this. And now we insert some coins into Azure and bind the money to your Microsoft account. So now we have 50,000 euros of Azure contingent on maybe Michael's Azure or Microsoft account. And 3 months later, he decided to leave the company. Now he's saying, oh, I don't want to get you the credentials to my Microsoft ID. Because, oh yes, there is Azure contingent, of course, but there's also my Xbox statistics on this Microsoft ID, so I don't want to leave them with you. Who wins?
Michael always wins.
Michael always wins. That's a nice approach. The Microsoft ID is your personal ID. It's a consumer product. Microsoft IDs, our Xbox IDs, Outlook IDs are consumer products. They are bound to you as a person. If you want to do really business with Azure, use Active Directory accounts, because Michael's leaving the company in 3 months while he can't take his Active Directory account with him. So this is the account where the money should be tied. To create a hybrid identity setup for Active Directory account, it's really easy. There are basically 2 options. First option is to do a more or less real-time synchronization of your on-premise Active Directory services with Azure Active Directory. Azure Active Directory is not a one-to-one approach of the classic Active Directory domain services. Most of the times it can't speak Kerberos. Everyone who's tried to use Active Directory without Kerberos would run into problems. Since some weeks there is a kind of Kerberos simulation service for Azure virtual machines. So basically you can now join your Azure VMs to Azure Active Directory, but you can't do that with on-premise VMs yet. So we still have classic Active Directory domain controllers, and just setting up a sync service, Azure Active Directory Connect. We can switch to the identity section for a second. And we say, okay, I want to replicate all my users, all my groups with all their attributes, including passwords, I'm coming to that in a second, to our Azure Active Directory. So our on-premise Active Directory, Azure Active Directory are holding the same user database. If you don't want to replicate your user passwords to Microsoft Azure, well, whoever in the world would have a problem with that, because an Azure Active Directory is automatically always replicated to the United States of America. Doesn't matter in which Azure region you are, Azure Active Directory is the one service that gets always replicated to Microsoft USA. Whoever has a problem with that could use Microsoft Identity Manager, MIM. There's a very lightweight version of it to just do trust between your Active Directory and Microsoft's Azure Active Directory. The hugest difference between that is that if you use a replication service, Azure AD Connect, you have the same namespace. So your on-premise Active Directory domain will be available in Azure. If you use the Identity Manager approach, you just will have to use 2 namespaces for Connect and have like a trust between the 2 bots. Well, why should you use Azure Active Directory at all? I just gave you an example for the login. Why should you use Azure Active Directory besides from that? Well, let's just take a minute and think about the huge innovations in classic Active Directory in the last, say, 10 years. What were the biggest changes that happened to Active Directory in the last 10 years? Well, there were some very minor improvements like Active Directory Recycle Bin and a graphical user interface for that, but aside from that, Azure Active Directory looks more or less the same as 2 years ago. Every innovation around Active Directory is gone into Azure Active Directory. And I will demo just one of the nicest features of Azure Active Directory. There are very many, like self-service password reset, Azure rights management out of the box. You don't have to install or create anything, but I will demo a lock-on process. So now I'm not only relying on Azure Internet, I'm also relying on phone connection and my on-premise data center in Hamburg. I'm just opening a new browser and I have to enter a password. I'm connecting remote. I'm connecting to my on-premise lab environment. This is a Hyper-V host hosting some Windows Server 2012 and Windows Server 2016 connections. And well, we have said nobody is using the public internet for the virtual machines to publish them over RDP. This is exactly what I do. So this virtual machine is accessible via remote desktop protocol over the public internet, even through hotel Wi-Fi. And I now want to open this RDP connection. But this RDP connection is not opening. And this is not relying on bad internet or hotel Wi-Fi or whatever. I entered the correct password. But my Azure Active Directory account is protected with a 2-factor authentication. Now I get a phone call. And there is a nice, very erotic lady talking. And this lady This lady now wants me to enter a very special hidden key, or if you really want to use a third factor, additional PIN. And only when I acknowledge this connection request for my administrative connection to my Hyper-V host with this second factor, this is my phone, this connection will maybe successfully open, but if I don't do this, this won't happen. I use my phone to protect every sensitive services around the Microsoft world, even outside of the Microsoft world. And this is not an Azure service. This is an on-premise Hyper-V host. This is an RDP connection. Sorry, to my on-premise Hyper-V host. I just leverage Azure Active Directory to connect to it. I know maybe it was too slow to successfully open the connection, but I also have secured the Active Directory as an administrative access to my Azure portal. Please log out of the Azure console there, and we will re-log in. I did this with phone authentication. We can also do it via SMS, via a telephone. We can also do it via an app. And if we are in environments like this one, where Wi-Fi is not the coolest option, I also have a one-time token. I can just enter, and if I don't enter this token, nothing will happen around my session. I entered the correct password, and it's now saying, hey, use the mobile app. This one here, there will pop up authentication request in a second, and I cannot log in into my Azure portal. And we also see some customization that's coming from Azure Active Directory. Here's the request right now, and I'm acknowledging it. If I'm saying, no, I'm currently not creating a secure connection to Azure and say, this is not me, this is a fraud attempt, my Active Directory account will automatically get locked out because there could be something wrong. And now, when I successfully acknowledge the connection request here, my log on with the correct password will continue. This is a free service, Azure Multi-Factor Authentication, for every Azure administrator and for every Office 365 user. So if you are leveraging Office 365 for using mail, for using Office, this is a service you will get for free. If you are neither of them, you don't have an Azure Administrator account or an Office 365 user, this will cost you around €1 per month for the security part. Tell me another security feature that is this great and is costing this less money. So now I'm using the Azure portal with a hybrid identity model and leveraging my Active Directory account. This is the same Active Directory account I use for login at this PC and my corporate account at work. And when I leave the company, well, my Azure Active Directory account will get locked out and the Azure credits will be transferred to someone else. So I can't pimp up my Xbox statistics with the money I have there. Okay, any questions around hybrid identity?
Is there some new client for the MFA authentication for iOS and for Windows Phone?
Yes, the client I used here is called Azure Authenticator. It's a successor to the old Azure Multi-Factor Authentication app. This app is available for Windows Phone, for iOS and for Android as of today. So you are not bound to the Windows Phone platform. Of course, I use a Windows Phone, but if you have an Android device or iOS device, the same app is available on the Google Play Store and the Android Store as well. On the Microsoft page about Active Directory, there are the download links from the Play Store and the App Store to get there. There's also the possibility to do it without a smartphone. The first thing I demoed, the phone authentication, can work on a classic landline phone as well, so there's no approach to do it only with a smartphone. It could be any type of phone you're carrying around or have at your desk. And we have successfully opened now internal RDP connection over our VPN connection. This virtual machine isn't accessible over the internet, but we used our Active Directory account and our VPN connection to securely connect to Azure. So this would be the two basic steps you should do before you are using virtual machines in Azure in production to secure your network and to secure your identity. So, being successfully connected to our management VM, it's time to use Azure for more than just placing some virtual machines there. When I ran a data center before my time in L&T, I had a nice guy coming around every Monday morning to pick up my backup tapes from the weekend. Let's just say this was very expensive, unreliable, and well, did not have the results I wanted to know. And currently I'm leveraging Azure Backup to use Azure as my backup target, not for my primary backup, but for my secondary backup, which in the past used tape. Anyone still using tape? Some hands are going up, and not many, that's great. Azure is very great for secondary backups, and I'll tell you why. In Azure, storage is very cheap. You pay around 20, 23 euros per terabyte for storing your backups. In Azure, incoming traffic is free. So all data you are pushing to Azure are not generating traffic costs on the Azure side of the Azure. Because, of course, if you have a provider with some traffic containers, you have to pay for it, but on the Azure end, this is not generating any cost. Only if you are restoring under certain kind of situations, and I really hope you don't have to restore from your secondary backups that much, because if you have to, you should maybe rethink your backup strategy. Then there are some scenarios where you could generate some traffic costs. Well, so this is very easy, this is very inexpensive, but who is trusting their backup data to Azure? Backup data should be protected the same way primary data like file services like the SAN storage are protected as well. If I want to get into a company and say, well, I want to get your most secret files, I don't break into your data center. I just take a cab, and go into your front desk and say, well, I'm here to pick up the backup tapes. Who's encrypting backup tapes today? No one does, because you are too anxious to not have the recovery password available when you need to. So in 9 of 10 cases, backup tapes are unencrypted. This is the easiest way to get into a company's data on a large file set to just grab the secondary backups. And every time I talk to customer about, oh, why don't you leverage Azure? It's so more reliable, it's so easy, it's so cheap. They say, no, I don't trust them. And what I want to do, I just want to pick out one point around the Azure backup scenario. We did some preparations, we installed the Azure backup client on this machine. That's very easy. You go to the Azure portal, select the download link, go to recovery services, and a second, there they are. Create a new backup vault, that's taking around 60 seconds, enter your backup vault, and there is a Microsoft Azure Backup Agent. You can download it for Windows Server Backup, from System Center Data Protection Manager, and if you're using any other backup tool besides System Center DPM, I don't know why you should, you get a lightweight version of System Center DPM for free. Every Azure customer can use all you need stuff from Data Protection Manager for free if you're leveraging Azure Backup. There are these three download links. So you just select the download link of your choice. For reasons of time, I just selected the Azure Backup client for Windows Server, and we downloaded the vault credentials. And we now want to combine our on-premise server, we want to back up, and our Azure target. What the hell are vault credentials? Everyone heard of vault credentials before? Well, Microsoft did some very interesting stuff around Azure Backup Authentication. Well, authentication is pretty important because we want to protect our data. So username and passwords are not that great, we all agree on. What's better than username and passwords? Well, we just learned multi-factor authentication is. So every morning at 3 a.m. when my backup server is running a full backup, I need to get up and acknowledge the backup connection on my phone. No, I don't want to do that. So what's better than that? Certificate-based authentication is. So Microsoft tried in the first version of Azure Backup. Well, just use your enterprise PKI certificate to create your connection to Azure. It's very easy. Well, and Microsoft did, well, maybe forgot that not every customer is having an enterprise PKI at their hands. So they said, oh, no problem, just download the Windows SDK, use an undocumented PowerShell script, and you can create a self-signed password for Azure Backup, no problem. Well, nobody did that. So Microsoft learned, they were very good at learning, and said, okay, we will create the certificates for you. Here you can download your private key file and your public key file, here you go. Any problem with that? So Microsoft will create your private key file and would have it. Microsoft would have the encryption key, decryption key for your backup, so nobody used it. And in the third approach, Microsoft came up with vault credentials, and I really like the concept. The vault credentials are a small script that create the private key file on premise on the server you want to back up in the time where you register your server. I've just placed the raw credentials file, it's 2 kilobytes in my downloads folder, and in Azure Backup we have the option to register a server, and when I put the raw credentials files in there, it will generate your private key file under factors like the current date, the current time, the CPU ID of the computer you want to back up, so it's very unique. Microsoft also ensures that you cannot try again and try again and try again to simulate the same condition again. This raw credentials file is valid only 48 hours. So in the first 48 hours after download, we need to import this file into Azure Backup. And with this private key, we can log on to our Azure Vault where our backups are in. This is a secured and encrypted connection. In the next step, so after we have used multi-factor authentication in the portal to manage the secure connection to our backup portal, after we use the private key file to authenticate, we need to introduce a password to encrypt every bit of data that will be sent to Azure. This encryption will occur on the client side, so on this virtual machine we have here on premise with its finalized or updates. So basically we have 3 steps of security. We have the Azure portal where we configure Microsoft Azure Backup. Of course you can leverage PowerShell as well if you don't like the portal experience, with multi-factor authentication. We have an asymmetric key pair, asymmetric certificate pair of 2048 bits securing the connection from my backup client to my Azure portal. Maybe we can switch to the portal, to the backup board. So we have a very secure connection. If I lose my private key file connecting to the recovery vault, I can do 2 things. I can call Microsoft support and say, very fast Azure support, and say, hey, I lost my key file, I need to recover some files. And they say, well, no problem, just delete your backup vault, create a new one, and back up everything new, and this time keep your key. Well, I can't, I need to restore now. Sorry, we can't help you. No private key, we can't help you there. The second option is to ask the, agencies having special spy activities in their portfolio to maybe let them help you recover your private key file. If you don't have a CIA-like agency available to you, well, then you're lost and can't recover your backups. If you enter your password to encrypt your backup files, it's securing client side, it's a symmetric key pair, you also need to recover. So these are the 2 things you need available. Of course your phone and the key file for connecting to your backup vault and the symmetric password to decrypt your data. How? I'm coming to a question in a second. Any option to increase the security of these backups? Isn't this great? It's a 3-step security process I really like. Who is securing their own backups on a security level like this? As far as I know, no one is. No questions, sir?
The backup agents, they just available for Windows or the Linux agents as well?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
The backup agents for the
Yes.
servers that are on-premise, are just Windows agents or can you get agents for Linux and other?
As of today, it's Linux, it's Windows agents only for Windows Server Backup because it's extension of Windows Server Backup, but it's also agent for Windows System Center Data Protection Manager, and DPM can also back up all Linux workloads, so you can leverage Linux system this way. And of course, both of them can back up Hyper-V VMs. And we don't care what's running in a Hyper-V virtual machine, it's agnostic for them, so you can restore as well. But for everything on virtual machines, I will show you something greater in a second. Another question?
So it has all the functionality of the existing Windows backup?
Yes, it does. It's just an extension introducing a new backup target. It's the same for Data Protection Manager. If you're leveraging DPM, it will just introduce Azure as a secondary location to store your backups. It's not removing any other capability of the backup tool as well. Okay, this is great for storing our data, and now we go through the process. We can enter a proxy if we want to. We don't have one here. And I just select the work credential file. It's pretty easy. Downloads, 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 downloads. There you go. And now is the private key file generated on my on-premise system. And now I have to enter a passphrase to encrypt my backups. Well, the password must be a minimum of 60 characters. I'm a very lazy guy, so I just generate a passphrase of 36 characters, so it's very, very secure. And of course, we really need this passphrase, so I'm storing it on a very important place, my desktop. Everyone can find it there, it's no problem at all. And I register the server. And this is everything you need to do to create a successful hybrid connection from your on-premise systems to Azure Backup. This will take roughly about a minute. And there you go, server has been registered successfully. And now we can use the backup tool in the same way we did before. It doesn't change anything, as just introduced. We can now schedule backups to Azure and recover data from Azure. Any other questions about backups? One more?
Is there something like deduplication?
Is there something deduplication? If you're leveraging your existing backup tools and Data Protection Manager has some kind of data deduplication enabled, then it will leverage it as well in your premise system. If you are uploading it to Azure, it will always be a full backup, or the first time it will be incremental backups on the time after that. The nice part about Azure storage is that it will only utilize storage you really use. But maybe Microsoft does some kind of deduplication in the back end, but you pay for every bit of storage you use in the front end. So we don't have anything about it in a cost perspective if Microsoft uses deduplication in Azure backend. From my point of view, they don't.
So there's also no block level replication?
There's block level replication with Data Protection Manager to Azure. There is. So this is great for storing data to Azure, but if we secure all our servers to Azure and want to do a restore for all our servers, well, let's just say like 5 terabytes of data, this will take some time. If we don't have the RAN connection, we can also say Microsoft, hey, please send me a BitLocker encrypted USB disk. This will take 2-3 business days to arrive on us, so we don't need to download or upload our data. But there is a more convenient way I really like for complete servers. And this is the same way in the recovery services, but it's not a backup, it's a recovery services. It's called Azure Site Recovery. Who has heard of Azure Site Recovery already? We covered it, some of you, 3, 4, 5 fans, that's great. And Azure Site Recovery was pushed up with very great new capabilities in the last month. First of all, we don't need System Center to leverage site recovery. We just need a server. A physical server, a Windows server, a Linux server, a Hyper-V VM, or a VMware VM. We are capable of utilizing all these systems and using Microsoft Azure as a disaster recovery site. We have the same advantages like from the backup target. Traffic to Azure doesn't cost us a cent. What's the running cost of what's the cost of a non-running VM in Azure? A powered-off VM in Azure? 0. You only pay for the storage you're using, and as I said earlier, storage is very cheap in Azure, so Azure is a great backup data center. And we have different scenarios, and I want to show one scenario. As I said, we did it for a bunch of virtual machines just recently, switching to another environment, where I did the following. We're running 40 virtual machines, some of them with System Center, some of them directly on Hyper-V. And the customer asked us, hey, should I build a second data center for many millions, or do we have another great way? And I said, yes, we just replicate our virtual machines to Azure, and they are there on, well, let's just say hot standby. If we have a crash in our data center, like losing our sorry, or deleting our virtual machines by accident, we can start them in Azure in a matter of minutes. And I will just do a very quick walkthrough of this. I have here 39 virtual machines in Azure that are protected, and we can have a quick look on them. Just go into the collection code. Enter there, great. Over here, see the list of our on-premise virtual machines in Azure. So what I did is I installed a small agent on my Hyper-V servers. If you're using VMware or physical server systems, you need another server system on premise that's doing the conversion. Hyper-V system is just an agent on the virtual machine management server or on the Hyper-V agent itself. And these virtual machines are replicated successfully to Azure. And I just will show you the basic configuration for leveraging this. I select Microsoft Azure as my replication target. In the past you could just select a different Hyper-V site, but now say I want to replicate my virtual machines to Azure. And please replicate my virtual machines to Azure every 30 seconds, 5 minutes or 50 minutes. Everybody who used Hyper-V Replica before will say, hey, I know those replication cycles, and yes, Azure is leveraging Hyper-V Replica here, so we're just using Hyper-V Replica to Azure in a managed and controlled manner to replicate to Azure. That's the default setting there. If we miss a replication cycle because of limited bandwidth or something, it just will retake it later, so it's no problem with that. And there are some hidden gems in Azure Site Recovery I just want to make you aware of. The first option nobody selects, but I really recommend is to select additional recovery points. Because if we replicate our virtual machine in real time to Azure, we are protected from hardware failures. But only 40% of disaster scenarios are caused by hardware failures. What are the other 60%? Humans like us, administrators, users who accidentally delete the wrong virtual machine, who just click the mail attachment pdf.exe and well, encrypting their file server with some Trojan horse or something. And of course, this data will be replicated to Azure in real time as well. If we have a 3 terabyte file server and we accidentally deleted the contents, well, it will take hours to restore. We would use the backup from yesterday, taking maybe 5 hours to restore, and this business day and the next business day are gone. If we are saying, hey Azure, I just want to start my file server on a point of time 2 hours ago, well, I can be back online in 5 minutes. Yes, I will lose 2 hours of data, but if I would use my backup from yesterday, I would lose the whole day. So this offers many more capabilities. And Azure Site Recovery, Hyper-V Replica relies on block level replication to ensure that our databases exchange, and yes, Exchange is now supported with Azure Site Recovery. SQL Active Directory, we can use application consistent snapshots as well there. So basically, you know the options to configure this in Azure here, and after that, you just install a monitoring agent from the Azure Operation Management Services. It will take 5 minutes, and you have a complete hybrid cloud environment ready for a setup time in less than a day. And these are the steps I just said: hybrid network, hybrid identity, then think about backup and replicating virtual machines, implementing monitor to have a full hybrid cloud setup. This is basically it. So we now have an overview of what a great start into the hybrid cloud opportunity could be. Use Hyper-V, use Azure. If you need anything of it, go to azure.com. You get 30 days for free. Use the trials. Have a great day. And I will now give you a 10-minute break, and we will then continue with containers and Nano Server. See you in a minute.